I'd like to continue the theme of gaining the unexpected by inviting the panellists to join us. Eleanor Stevenson, would you like to come and have a seat at the table? Eleanor Stevenson is a school captain at Smiths Hills High School in Wollongong and an extremely keen public speaker and debater. Please welcome Eleanor. Melanie Jones is Vice President and Events Coordinator of the University of Wollongong's Debating Society. Welcome, Melanie. Rochelle Morris is Gumbae Nagura woman from the North Coast of New South Wales and team leader and student support advisor in the Woolling-Nugga Indigenous Centre at the University of Wollongong. Welcome, Rochelle. Eugenia Pine is a member of the Strategic Community Assistance to Refugee Families. She's originally from Liberia in West Africa. Welcome, Eugenia. Venerable Dr. Zhuwei is the Director of the Nantian's Institute and Humanistic Buddhism Centre, and she's the lecturer of the Institute's Applied Buddhist Studies. Welcome. The Honourable Sharon Bird, please. Welcome, Sharon. And finally, Barbara Malcolm, Coordinator of the Illawarra Older Women's Network Wellness Centre and the Drummers. Our panel is extremely diverse. We have Eleanor, who's only 16, and we have reached out to Barbara, who's in her mid-80s. Now, I'm not going to reveal the exact ages of the women, but can I share with you that we have covered every age group, and in fact, I only learnt today the decade of Venerable Dr. Zhuwei, who I thought was in her 30s, but she enlightened me that she was in her 50s. So thank you so much. I'd like to start off by asking each of you if you would share with us what is it that you have achieved in your career, in your life, that you feel is beyond the unexpected, in terms of what you were told was beyond the expectations of what you could have achieved. So perhaps if we could start with Eleanor, please. Rebecca, I'm so sorry. Goodness me. Rebecca, you know why I missed you? Because you're on the other page. Goodness me. That's my fault. Let me introduce you to Rebecca Schmidt. Rebecca is a Stroke Safe Ambassador for the Stroke Foundation Australia. Also advocates for the Unanderra Access Group about the Unanderra train station. Thank you so much, Rebecca. My apologies. So just going back to that question, if we could ask you, Eleanor, to share what is it that you've achieved beyond the unexpected?
Okay, so for me, I'm the school captain of my school, Smiths Hills High School. And from a fairly young age, I've been reasonably aware that I'm a bit of an introvert. I'm not necessarily a particularly loud person. I'm not necessarily a person that's really comfortable coming out of her shell often. And so part of taking up a leadership position and taking up a greater role in mentoring students at my school and kind of taking a part in my school community has been learning to overcome and also work with my introversion. So I think we live in a society where introverted people, and especially introverted girls, are told that they're not leaders. There's an image of leadership which is loud, which is very, very confident, and I think that comes through from a very young age. I think even in primary school, when we're told the kind of people who should try out for SRC or leadership positions we have a list of very, very extroverted adjectives. We have confidence, we have, being up at the front of assemblies. What we don't see is the administrative side of leadership. We don't see the being a role model side of leadership. And so we have this image of what a leader looks like that is very narrow, and it is not particularly accessible for a lot of people. So personally, in terms of my personal journey to becoming a leader and an introvert at the same time, it's about realizing that a lot of the qualities that you're told are not those of leaders actually are. So being an individual worker, or not necessarily being confident in a large group scenario, but working well with people one-on-one, can be used to your advantage. And you don't have to fit a very narrow typecast of what a leader looks like in order to be an effective leader, in order to be a role model for other people. I think that's something that's also come through in debating coaching. So I coach a few debating teams at my school. And for me, it was always slightly bemusing because they'd go really well in their debating competitions, and they'd thank me and they'd go, "Oh, you helped us a lot." And I'd go, "How? You were excellent to begin with." And so it was difficult for me to comprehend why they thought I'd done so much for them. And then I realized that it wasn't so much that, I provided them with drills and I made them practice every week or anything like that, but it's rather a process of supporting them, of making them love what they're doing, and of kind of encouraging them to follow their interests. I think that broadening our understanding of what leadership looks like is something that's broadly applicable to girls and women, because leadership has traditionally and continues to be something that's framed as a very, very male thing. And for quiet girls, that's a really hard thing to subvert and to get around. And so I think if we can make leadership look more diverse, if we can make people in leadership look more diverse, then that gives girls like myself, 5 years ago, people to look up to, people to imitate, and a more broad and kind of realistic understanding of what leaders and role models in our communities actually look like.
So I probably had a similar experience to Ellie when I was in high school, of being told that, a leader is someone who is very loud and confident in themselves and very extroverted. And in the same way was sort of like, I feel locked out of that because those are not necessarily things that I feel that I am, which didn't necessarily stop me trying, because I wanted to help other people and be in positions that would allow for that. But when other programs and systems buy into the fact that what a leader or a strong person should look like, you lock out other people who are just as capable of helping other people, even if they are softer spoken or have different views, and they look different to what we expect. And I found that was quite hard until I got more out into the world. So at university, for one of the leadership programs that I work at, I think the only criteria that they had for being a leader was that you were nice and friendly, and I'd never experienced that before, because it was always that you looked like this and you spoke this way and you had done so many different leadership programs before you could even become a leader. And I just think that that's not true, because anyone can be a leader or are capable of helping other people. So when we buy into things that lock other people out from that, we're just bringing ourselves down, and that doesn't help for change, because we can't advocate for change if we aren't allowing people to express how they do lead other people, even if it's just genuinely through being nice. Was shocking, I know. But when I've met other people who were also able to be leaders just by being friendly people who are open and perhaps softer spoken, and I thought, that revolutionizes the idea of who we ask to lead other people in the right direction, and that was just as important as being someone who is loud and confident and can work in big groups. So I also found that was something that was quite difficult, and I never expected, because I immediately locked myself out of that. And then even when I tried, had been again locked out by programs that also believed that was the case. But I think we are slowly moving to an area where we are more open-minded about what leaders look like, or about what women look like, and that people as a whole aren't to be put in boxes, and that we're all individually made up of lots of different complexities that make us who we are, and that we are starting to respect that more than just being small individual people who we don't want to see as unique individuals. So I think starting to do that has helped, to expect more of ourselves and to be able to actually access what we want to do, because now we're sort of going into a future where we believe that everyone can do something and make a change, and that's taken quite some time, but has been helpful.
Well done. I have to use them. Is it working? No. Sharon.
Hello. Well, I come from a different era to the girls. I was put very firmly in my place at the age of 7, when in the 40s my parents were divorced. And I was in a Catholic school, and the intake of breath, I was separated. I was sort of treated a little bit differently in class. The nuns sort of pitied me, oh, you poor child, and I couldn't see what had changed. The fact that Dad wasn't around, there wasn't seemed to be a great change in my life. My mum was the same. My mum was a struggler, and I grew up quite resilient because of that I was thought to be lesser, because of something that had happened that I had no control over. I think it created a resilience in me. And I thought, I'm not going to be that person, I'm going to be my person. And I sort of grew up to be my own person. And I grew up in the era where you finish school. If you were lucky, you finished school. I never finished school. But if you finished school, if you were lucky, you got an office job, and you could aspire to be a secretary. That was the top of the run. That was the key position. If you could be somebody's secretary, you made it. I've forgotten where I was now. I didn't have those aspirations, and I thought if you became a secretary and then you got married, you met somebody, you got married, you had children, and you sort of lived happily ever after. And I couldn't see my life being like that. That was my mother's life, except it didn't have to be happily ever after. She ended up happy, but not with the same person. But I didn't see that as my life. And I just went along my own way. I was married, I had a family, did all those things, P&C work, all sorts of things. At one time I helped, my daughter started at a new high school, and the high school was a building block. When they went into the school, there was no gardens, nothing there. So one of the things they needed was the footy field had to be grassed. So for many weekends, I joined a team of people that went over there every weekend, and we planted grass on this huge football field until we had the whole football field. When I go past that school now and I look at that field, I think, I helped plant that. I think high school students today, parents are not expected to plant a football field with grass. Anyway, but that was my life, and I went on that type of life, mother, family, the girls got married and everything, and suddenly one day I found I was 65, and I thought, what do you do when you get older? We moved from a rural property into a town, and I had no animals to look after. I had no children, they'd all left home. I didn't have any bushwalks to do, or fences to mend, or any of those things, and I thought, what the blazes do you do? If you live in a house, got a house, a home, a hubby and a hoover, but there's not a lot of else to do. And I looked in the paper and I saw the Older Women's Network were having a conference. I thought, oh right, I'm an older woman, I'm off to that. So I joined the Older Women's Network, and I was absolutely amazed. I could not believe what those women were doing. These were the women that Jenny talked about earlier, that in the late 60s and early 70s suddenly realised that they were coming towards the end of their working life. They'd had no superannuation, they had no they'd worked for half wages all their lives, and they'd faced a lot of discrimination all their lives, and suddenly they were facing, at the age of 60 in those days, you had to retire. That was it, you retired when you were 60. Or if you were a nurse or a teacher or anything like that, you retired when you got married. So that it was very hard for those women, especially had they met their partners, because at that time, around the 70s, women started to feel stronger and feel that, no, I don't have to stay in this marriage if it's not the right thing for myself and my family. I can be on my own. But then they found that when they retired, there was nothing. There was just nothing. So they were the women that actually fought early in the piece for superannuation and that. Then when they retired at 60, they were still fired up and very angry. And they banded together, and in 1987 they formed the Older Women's Network. And these are the women that I joined. I joined them in 1997, and they were the ones that inspired me to go on. And since then they've been pushing me. I worked in just about everything that you can do in the Older Women's Network. I've practically done it. They've put me in running conferences, liaising between, the Older Women's Network has 18 groups throughout the state. They have 18 groups and 6 wellness centres, and they put me as a liaison officer between all the groups and the wellness centres, and I was trotting around meeting all these other women that were doing all my amazing things, and so on, and I've done things like that. And then in 2009, they said, all right, well, we need another wellness centre to open up, so they sent me down to Coniston, and here I am. I opened a wellness centre for older women. We opened in 2009 with no members at all. We called a meeting, did members want to have this happen here? And I was amazed, about 100 women turned up in the hall that day to say, yeah, they would like a wellness centre. So we started our wellness centre with, we started off with Tai Chi, gentle exercise and the drumming. And I went from there. By the way, in the meantime, I became a drumming teacher, and I've drummed all over the state. Interstate, we've been to Perth, and we've been to Brisbane, and we've been all over the place drumming. When we opened the wellness centre, as I said, we had nobody on the books. There was a lady called Thelma Prescott and myself. I said to Thelma, you fill in the book. I'll say hello when people arrive. We hired facilitators, and our facilitators are all highly trained to work with older people. And away we went. And we've grown from no members to we have over 100, nearly, I think we're about 160 members at the moment. We have 100 women a week come through that centre and take part in all sorts of fitness training, and we have Tai Chi, international folk dancing, which is very interesting. We have physical, gentle exercise and a fitness program. We have drumming. We have Thai yoga, which we're the only centre that have Thai yoga in Australia, and possibly there's not a lot of them throughout anywhere other than in Thailand. It's a different type of yoga. And we have ukulele players as well as running workshops. So I never considered myself a leader. I was always a gopher. You know, they'd say, Barbara, that needs doing. So I just figured out a way to do it. And so I'm not a leader, I'm a gopher. Thank you.
Hi everybody, and can I just start by acknowledging the original inhabitants of the land and pay my respects to elders past and present. I think that's a particularly significant recognition today. I sit somewhere generationally between Erin and Melanie and Barbara, and I'm very, very conscious of the inheritance that I stand on the shoulders of. And only probably 2 weeks ago now, I took my mum to see Hidden Figures, the movie. Highly recommend you see it if you haven't. And it's just an I just watched it, these 3 African American women at the beginning of the space race who achieve what they achieve is just the most extraordinary story I have ever seen. When you consider the double prejudice that they were living their lives in the reality of, being women and being black in America in those days. The fact that they achieved what they did is a sign, I think, of two things. One, of how extraordinary their minds were, to the point where it couldn't be ignored. And two, how in times when a nation or the world just can't afford to be biased because the problems are so great they need to harness every resource they can, suddenly women who are gophers, who just get things done, appear and contribute. And I hope that over the decades since then, we've got much, much better at looking at people like all these wonderful young men and women in the room today and saying they have potential, they can live a full life that contributes to our society, and we should be doing every single thing we can for every one of them to make sure that they achieve that. And I think that is the legacy we have from the women who went before us, trailblazing for 100 years now, and the responsibility we have to those that follow us. And so for me, I think in terms of the unexpected, I was raised by a very activist feminist mum who was, as Jenny talked about, establishing the first refuges at the time with a group of women who were the Mount Warrigal Public School Women's Canteen group, decided when the first refuge opened in Sydney to go up and have a look at it, and that they should have one down here. Probably not the spot you would expect a very radical activist type of approach to come from, it's like Barbara said. But they did it. They joined up with the local council, a group of trade unions, the nuns from the local church, and got a property, spent weekend. I just remember I was probably about 7 or 8, spending weekend after weekend there while they repainted and redid all the plumbing and so forth. It was a very old rundown house, and established the original Warilla Women's Refuge. And so I have to be honest, I grew up, my mother expected me to get out there and do. Like, you know, no excuses. You get out there and you achieve and you make the most of your life. And I'm the eldest of 5. I have 4 brothers. And she brought them up to expect exactly the same, not only of themselves, but of me and their partners and women they interacted with in their community. I have 2 sons, and I think our responsibility is to say to our young men, your lives will be so much richer if you have a partnership with the women in your world, in whether that's at work or in your personal life. True partnerships deliver real pleasure and joy in life and make real achievements, and it's everything in your interest to be part of this movement. And so the unexpected for me, I think, was, I hit barriers. I took 7 pre-selections. That's the set process by which the party picks who their candidate's going to be at an election. 7 of them before I won. The last one, I have to be honest, I said to some people, look, you know, I think I've mastered losing gracefully. I don't quite know why I'm continuing to do this, and I really expected to have another episode of losing gracefully, and I didn't. And I'm wearing Eleanor Roosevelt today, because I think she was one of the very first public figure women who said, don't ever let a setback put you off course. That you're in control of your destiny. Only you can decide what you take out of both wins and losses. And the power is with you to take that and turn it into something positive. So she's always been an inspiration for me. So on International Women's Day, I like to recognise her. But importantly, I think we are a story from generation to generation. And that's what I think I found most surprising at the end of the day was the enormous joy that you get out of being a part of that, not only taking from those that went before you, but giving to those who follow after you. So that's it.
Before I answer the question, on behalf of all the staff and volunteers of Nantian Temple, I'd like to welcome all the women and men who have come here to our little sanctuary. In our tradition, we say that the saints ride on clouds and winds and rains. So you are the saints for us today, coming here to bless our little sanctuary. Thank you very much for braving the rain. Gaining the unexpected. For me, it's being a renunciant, a Buddhist nun. That was not in the list of ambitions when my primary school teacher asked me to write an essay, what are your ambitions? Never would I have thought that I would one day renounce to become a Buddhist nun. I come from Singapore, and at that time I didn't know that I would land up in this happy nation, Australia, the most multicultural nation on earth. I came from a small island, and now I'm in the largest island on the planet. My world just opened up. When I was young, I come from a very humble family. My parents did not complete primary school, so they invested all their energies and their resources on their only child, and that happened to be a daughter. Now that is not very much liked in our family, so my grandparents would not talk to me. I'm always left alone, and my nephews and cousins, I've got lots of them. I'm nobody in that environment. So my mother taught me from young that I have to grow up to be somebody. So they invested so much in my education. I managed to win a scholarship and went to America to study computer science and engineering up to the master's level, came back and worked in the civil service as a civil servant for many years. And they were expecting me to live a normal life, get married, have children, have grandchildren, and just be an honor to the family and show off to my grandparents, who didn't think very much of me, that finally a girl can make something of herself. But about 15 years after I started working, I decided to make a change in my so-called career path. To me, I find that I don't have to follow a life that is set out to me. I can follow my heart's ambition. And what I wanted to do was self-mastery for the greater good. And I found my answers in the Buddhist teachings. They taught me how to be ethical, how to be compassionate, to be meditative, to be calm, and most important of all, to think of the public. And that was what I was raised to do in the government service. So I find it as a continuation, but beyond a small island to the world, beyond just a few people, a small family, to a big family of brothers and sisters. So to me, that's gaining the unexpected, opening up my heart. Perhaps that's what keeps me young. Because my heart is always with everyone. It's always doing things for others, and that helps me to overcome a lot of problems. But what makes it possible is because of a Buddhist monk. My master, Venerable Master Xing Yun, he's a man. He's a monk who believes very much in gender equality. He sent monks and nuns to school. So I managed to get my PhD. I have equal opportunity. So I'd like to also encourage the men as well as the women in the room that when we are in a position of power, when we are able to grant others opportunities, to remember all sides, every sentient being, everyone, we are all entitled to the same rights. And we can do it together. Thank you.
So what do I consider I've achieved that's beyond what expected? I guess first and foremost, I've come from a family that has been affected by the stolen generation. Majority of the children that were taken away were women. So I think being encouraged by my mother in particular to further my studies was probably a turning point for myself. But however, I did feel that I was dealing with more social expectations of what an Aboriginal woman should look like and what they should be about. I think for myself, I made choices not to be, I guess, influenced or stuck in a welfare cycle, I guess, is what was being portrayed. Young women like myself to have children, stay at home, not have an education is what I was seeing in particular within my own community that I was, I guess, around. But I had made those choices to get an education, to go to university and now work at a university as well. So I guess for me, just overcoming those barriers of social expectations and attitudes is something that I think I have achieved. I've still got a long way to go. Leadership in particular is something that's kind of new to me at the moment. I've only just started to get my head around what it is to be a leader, but also what it means to be an Indigenous leader. I don't feel that in society today we have many people that could be classed as an Indigenous leader per se, because it's not relatively thought of in that sense in Aboriginal culture. I don't think we ever put each other up as a leader or on a pedestal, so I don't think that term is something that we would use per se. But trying to navigate and find my way in that realm is something that I'm looking at the moment. Indigenous women in leadership roles is an interesting thought. I guess working in an institution like a university, I at times don't feel like a person that looks like me could actually be in a senior leadership role. So I know that it's difficult as women in general, but when you have those double-edged swords where you've got race behind that, that there becomes a bit contentious and you're kind of thinking about where do you fit in that world. I think a lot of the times, I guess taking the Aboriginality out of it, confidence has always been something that I really needed to work on in order to be able to talk to people. So I think women in general just doing a self-reflection of who we are, I think is the first and foremost thing that we would need to do in order to see if we even fit in what is a leadership or a leader to fit in that realm. So doing a self-reflection and knowing who you are is something that I think is the first thing that we need to do. But culture is something, and the values and the beliefs have really been instilled in me to be able to get to the point of where I am. So leadership, while I'm saying it is new, I'm still trying to find myself and where I am placed within that. But being able to be true to who I am as an Aboriginal person as well, but not forgetting that. So being split between two different worlds in society, particularly in Australia, I think it's an interesting thought, and I think we've still got a long way to go. I feel, I guess, within the Indigenous community that there is a lot of pressure on people to be leaders because we're so socially disadvantaged. A lot of the times you would see men, Indigenous men being put up in those leadership roles, but I do believe women don't have a voice. We're the caretakers, you know, we're the ones that are taking care of kids, people in families, we're very matriarchal depending on what nation you're from. I know for me, in my family, it's very matriarchal. There's a lot of women, strong women, but we don't class ourselves as leaders. But I would love to see more women out there, whether it's in Parliament, in university institutions, wherever it is, to see Aboriginal women up in those senior leadership roles as well. So yeah, just trying to find my way through that, navigating that as well, and just I feel that making that choice to actually get an education and not be a statistic or a cliche is something that I have I guess, broken through barriers of what expected of an Indigenous person, but an Indigenous woman in general. So thank you.
I want to start by saying gaining the unexpected. For me, I would say what I have gained or I have achieved or still achieving is not something that is really unexpected in an Australian community. It's something normal. It's something that everybody will expect. But for me, it's something unexpected for me. So actually, it's studying now at the University of Wollongong, doing just a bachelor degree. Is something that is beyond my expectation of what something that I've never dreamed of. This is because I was born in Liberia, as you heard, and from a culture and belief from a family where, as a girl, when I was younger, I was not the right human being to have been sent to school. So, as the youngest sister of 5 sisters, and so I was the only one left home to have been married up, given up in marriage, because all my sisters were all gone. They were all married. That gave them up in marriage. But at the age of 10, something happened in my family. And that was the time that my mother stood up as a single mother at this time, who didn't have the voice herself, but she thought, now I think I am the family head. That was actually my lovely dad passed away at the age of 10. And my mother, the right thing was for her, she should have at this time, when dad passed away, she should have also given me up in marriage, so that because the husbands of your children, they help you, especially when you are a widow, they will be your helping hand. Instead, she thought, no, my last daughter is going to go to school, and I want her to be a nurse. Though I'm not doing nursing now, as you heard, I'm doing social work. But she said, my daughter, I'm going to do everything possible, and I'll make sure that she becomes a nurse. So anyway, she sent me to school at the age of 10, started kindergarten. She tried, as a single mother, she tried every possible thing that she could do for me. And I got to year 10. And this was the second girl in my entire township to come to this far in education. So in year 10, that was the time the Liberian Civil War took place. And since then, life has been difficult. And from the Civil War to 9 years in refugee camp, I've never thought, there's no way I would have thought of going back to school or anything close to that. So when I was lucky enough to find myself in this beautiful country as a single mother of 5 young children, or under 13 when I came in 2005, my only thought was to try to, how do I get them to be educated? 2 girls, 3 boys. So I thought I'm going to help them to make sure they get education, because now they are well privileged, it's a better place. After these years, few years ago, I thought everything I've gone through, my experience of the war and refugee life, I didn't know I could even, that life would be possible. But now, looking around me in the beautiful Wollongong, the most loving and caring city in the world, I found myself thinking that it's possible. Maybe it's possible. Although my age is another roadblock, I'm very proud to tell you my age. At the age of 45, last year I decided to say that in my community, this is very unusual. At age 45, going to university, that's like, I heard a few comments, people saying, I think you're going to be in nursing home when you finish. Okay, it's all right. You're going to, are you sure you don't teach old dog and new tricks? I heard, different comments that could discourage me, and I know in my head that I don't care my age, what I've gone through, or whatever. I know I can do this. So, looking at myself today as a single mother of 4, after I lost my older boy to leukemia again a few years ago, I still think I can make it, and I will make it, and that's why I'm in my 3rd year doing the social work degree, bachelor degree, and I think most of this, as I said, is my mother. She's in Liberia now, turning 80 this year, and a woman who didn't have any education herself. I don't know how she knew the importance of this, but she got me here today, and being here in Australia improved it better, what she taught, and this is something special for me and my family. Getting in this year now, everyone who thought I couldn't make it, they are saying now, oh, I think you're doing something great. So this is my little story of what I've expected of Guinea. I say I'm Guinea, I'm achieving, and I thank you all.
Okay, so basically I'm going to talk about my stroke experience so that you can get an idea of what's involved for some people that actually go through that. Before I had my stroke, I was pretty active, did a lot of sport. Coached netball, played touch football, went out dancing every weekend, and I was a bit of a high achiever. I liked to do everything I could to get the results I wanted to. But when I was 26, it was very unexpected. I had a stroke in my brainstem, which means everything from my neck down was cut off. So when I woke up, I could only roll my eyes around in my head, and they told me, that's it. I thought, well, that's not very good, I don't like that answer. So I spent the next 7.5 months in the hospital doing rehabilitation till I got to the point where I was able to go home. And then I done like 2.5 years of outpatient therapy to try and get myself as good as I possibly could be from what I was before. So basically, everything that I had to go through, I had to learn to walk, talk, read, not so much read, write, everything, drive, all over again. So a lot of people, my mother in particular, said it's like being born again. Started from scratch pretty much. The sad part was I already knew everything inside my head. I just couldn't get everything to match up and get it all to work again. So what I gained basically was everything. I thought that I wouldn't have anything anymore, and basically here I am, and now I'm moving around. That's my unexpected journey.
Thank you to each of you for those powerful, powerful stories. can I just say that I've drawn from all of your stories some themes that I'd like to share with you as a reflection. So there have been catalysts in some of your stories in terms of parents who have supported you from the very beginning, or grandfathers who kind of stood in your way. And those catalysts have motivated you to look around for yourself and make choices. But I find in each of their stories the inspiration, the courage, the resilience, the motivation, the self-reflection has come from within themselves. For both of you, it's been about what leadership is and why am I not going to fit that model, and who is to say that I'm not a leader the way I am. For Barbara, it was incredible in terms of back then when there were so many barriers for women that you decided that you didn't want that particular life that was being offered to you, and you made your way and you still are. I love the idea of the gopher. I think I'm going to use that instead of the word leader, because really leadership is about having a vision and making it happen and sharing that vision and bringing people with you. And that's what you do, Barbara. And Sharon, I think what you've talked about in terms of your mum, and she basically did that. She got out there and started that refugee centre, and you saw that and you were inspired and you imbued that in what you do today. That's just incredible that you've not only stopped at just doing it locally, but you've taken it to a national level. And Venerable Dr. Zhue, I thought your story was incredible because you went against tradition and you stood up for the fact that although I'm not a boy, I'm a woman, that I have a valuable place in this world and I want to make a difference. And then to stop your career and say, this doesn't feel right, I want to do something different and find that way. I thought, Rochelle, your story was incredible because I can't even imagine what it would be like to have that history, that the stolen generation, to be in that context, to be feeling that and to not know why was that injustice there. I thought it was so fascinating what you talked about leadership in the Aboriginal community, that there is this notion of leadership for everyone, but for the Aboriginal community it is different. And how do I navigate between those variables, and how do I sit comfortably, because I'm living in two worlds. I can be comfortable as a leader in the non-Aboriginal world, but in this world I have to earn that right, so how do I navigate that? And Eugenia, your story is incredible because you have gone through so much of pain, personal loss and pain in your life. Again, I just cannot imagine what you've gone through. Your mum to have put you through the education system, and then for you to come here, and I love what you kept saying, that I think I can make it, I think I can make it. And boys and girls who are here from schools, I want to point out to you that this is all about you, as we've highlighted. It is about your ability to say to yourself, whatever I am confronted by, I have the means. I just have to take the time out to reflect and look at my life and look at my capacity. And if you don't have the capacity, then it's for you to find the means to gain that capacity, but never say no and never turn away and say, as Jenny said, never be apathetic and say, I give up. Because you are the only person, no matter how small or how ugly we are or whatever those baggages are that we carry around, you're the only person who can do it. And we have every faith and trust in you. And Eleanor and Melanie, I'm an introvert, an incredible introvert. I hate standing out here and speaking. This is not my forte, but I do it because I have a message, and it's that calling that makes me want to do things like this. So thank you so much. I'd like to turn it over to you for questions.
I'd like to say a lot depends on ourselves, how we handle the external environment, and for us to find that inner strength in us. It is inevitable. I think we deal with a lot of